Well, good afternoon, good morning to our friends on the West Coast. We're a little different start time today for this particular topic. Um, I'll be honest, this one's taking us in a new direction. The idea of working in a post-COVID world. We were remarking before we started today that we're good with all the terms around the tech industry, whether you're talking RF, whether you're talking mics. We've got all our slang and our three letter nomenclatures, but this whole COVID thing, it's like another language that we're now learning to speak, and things like sterilization and things like uh, uh, technical wipes. What technical wipe? What the heck is that, right? And again, a lot of different thought process. So today, this one's going to be much different than a lot of our other formats have been. Yes, we will be hearing a lot of information. We'll be hearing from outside people within our industry. So first disclaimer, we don't have any doctors on the show today. We don't have any virologists, I believe would be the correct word. Well, Mac's going to pretend he's one. But today is, again, one of those topics around getting more questions and ideas than about answering questions. This is very much a topic of, I put in the category of we don't know what we don't know. And we're going to try and discover what we need to know. And we have a little time to do this. As you may all know from the town hall that we did a couple weeks ago, Denise Woodward joined us to just talk about early on what she had been discovering through research on cleaning of products. So I'm gonna kind of set some boundaries for our discussion today. Today will not be about determining what we think workplace rules should be. They will not be around necessarily, if someone is how we're going to test for whether someone's sick or not on the work site. These are topics that we will have to talk about, and they're areas that will have to be addressed, obviously. But for today, this is the low-hanging fruit discussion, which is, let's talk about the equipment we use, how we use it, and what can manufacturers, what can vendors, what can the technicians do, number one, to help not spread this virus around in our workspace, but also what I consider to be equally important is making sure that our clients, whether they're production companies or whether it is the production company's client, the end user, or the talent, are comfortable that we're taking, reasonable, as well as maybe in some cases, you might look at them and go, well, that seems kind of excessive. Well, you know what? If this puts people at ease and and they're more comfortable, I think we're in an everything's on the table portion of the discussion right now. You'll notice in your handouts, we've put in Denise's presentation, as well as another document around workplace safety, and not just safety, but things around communication. So much of what we're dealing with right now is a lot of anxiety, and a lot of that anxiety comes from just not knowing, not having information. So today, Denise, we talked over the weekend about kind of where we wanted to head, and both of us agreed that we want to stay positive about this. This is a difficult topic. That's not to diminish that it's not a lot of hard answers that are going to have to be found. But if we can't remain positive about it, meaning how do we make forward motion? How do we do that in a very collaborative way? If you're with a manufacturer today and you're listening, this discussion is very much around how can you help us in the field. So during this time today, while you're listening to presentations, while you're talking, type in as fast as you can. I'm going to let Mac and Pete talk about that for just a minute, because it is a little more different what we're going to be seeing later on in the presentation. But Pete, Mac, let's talk about maybe what we hope to gather from the audience today.
Sure. Yeah, normally we would be explaining how to do Q&A, and I think maybe Pete will expand more because I'm on a job and I missed part of the prep for this this session. So
if you're not in rehearsal, you can't be in the show.
well, I have to go back to work soon. So
that's right. We're going to keep you working.
But I am really looking forward to this, because the situation I'm in right now, this all plays into. I'm working in a television broadcast control room where 4 months ago we had maybe 15 people on the show. Now we have 5, because we just can't get any closer together. We can't fit any more people in there and still maintain distancing. And I'm also interested in addressing the manufacturers and getting information from them about proper cleaning and sanitizing procedures, because we have been sanitizing equipment here using commercially available wipes, and I don't know which one it was that did it, but I'm sitting behind a 4-month-old SSL console that the finish is now pretty much ruined on. I mean, right. It's still functional and it still works fine, but it's definitely not pretty anymore. And it's right. Only 4 months. It's only 4 months old. So, these are. I mean, that's the cosmetic aspect of the gear is, kind of a minor issue. It's really about people's safety, but it's a big investment, the gear we have, and it's we want to maintain it in its as pristine a condition as we can, and getting that information is going to be useful, and getting information on how to keep ourselves safe is going to be useful. So
I agree.
I think what we want the people here watching to do is to, instead of asking questions that we're not really in a position to answer, to let us know their thoughts on this stuff and things they would like to know, but we can then pass on to people who will have to come up with these answers.
Absolutely.
So Pete, did I cover it?
You're close. You're close. But you didn't hear the whole rehearsal, so you're not right on mark.
Exactly.
So,
I did not.
After Denise's presentation, we'll be bringing up on screen a list that we started on our last show. So far, there's 17 things on it. Ideas, just general ideas about things that can be done new in the COVID era. And Kelly, you said, look at the positive part of this. Well, I think there's an extremely terrific positive part of this. We're probably going to get less colds. We're going to get less flu. People are going to get less sick, because we're not going to be passing around germs. And this is all part of learning to live in a world with an enemy that's this big. Oh, wait, you can't even see it. It's this big, really, really, really little. But it's deadly. And unless we learn how to fight and or live with it, we're not going to live. So send your questions in. We're going to keep them in a list. Denise is not going to answer questions till the end of her presentation, and then we'll go through some of them, and then we'll just start throwing out ideas and talking about ideas. So if you just have an idea of something that might be good to do in the marketplace or in the world, or a different way to deal with things like disposable windscreens on headsets, stuff like that, which are already in our list, please just send it in. Denise, it's yours.
Okie dokie. Let's see if I can share my screen here.
How's that? We're seeing it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you guys for having me. My name is Denise Woodward. I'm an A2 and an intercom tech, mostly. I am a member of IATSE Local 16 in San Francisco, California. I also work quite a bit for the San Francisco Symphony. I'm their head audio for their experimental performance space SF Soundbox. I'm also an RF tech there, and I'm also an assistant recording engineer for the Symphony. I started working on this project because I wanted to figure out what we were going to do when we get back to work. And I started working on this project primarily for myself and for the San Francisco Symphony. And then I hooked up with Kelly, and Kelly asked me to present my findings to you all. And I just want to say I'm not an expert in any of this. Kelly said that before. None of us are experts at any of this. I'm an A2 who's had a lot of time on her hands lately. We've been in shelter in place for 6 or 7 weeks now. And when I'm not going to the awesome webinars that Kelly and Mac and Pete and all the manufacturers are putting out, I've been spending some time researching how do we clean and sanitize our audio gear. All of us know that the audio department in general and the A2 in particular has to manage a lot of this, what I call high touch multi-user gear. Wireless mics, intercom, IFBs, assisted listening, two-way radios. And I started wondering, what's it going to be like when we get back to work? I believe that there's going to be a sensitivity to the cleanliness of the equipment, much more so than has been in the past. And I also think that there's going to be an expectation, even after COVID-19, after we're not all wearing masks out to the supermarket and stuff, there'll be an expectation that the gear is cleaned frequently and on site. So like I said, I'm not really talking about working during this global pandemic. We're going to have a speaker in a little bit who's working on broadcast right now, who can talk a little bit about what sort of challenges and solutions they're coming up with working during this pandemic. I was able to look at a flow chart from a television studio, and there were things like, there were very strict rules and protocols, even down to how to shoot a scene. You had to shoot the scene with a boom mic. If you couldn't use a boom mic and you had to use a lavalier, the talent had to mic themselves. If the talent was unable to mic themselves, this is all in a flow chart, then you could have an A2 who was wearing gloves and masks and standing 6 feet away supervise the talent miking themselves. And if you still couldn't achieve the placement of the microphone with the A2 supervising the talent, and the A2 had to touch the talent, both talent and A2 had to be in, I believe it was triple layers of personal protective equipment. And I don't think that kind of stuff is really practical for what we do in live events. Who knows what the future is going to hold, but I'm sort of looking at a time when audiences are more comfortable going back to live events. Regardless, we are going to go back to work at some point, and I think there's going to be a new set of expectations. I think it's plausible that a presenter might expect an A2 to demonstrate that a microphone was clean before they're willing to wear it. And even if there's no expectation, I think we could provide a higher level of service, and we can demonstrate that we care about one another and our clients by having the knowledge of how to clean and sanitize equipment, and having the without damaging it, as Mac pointed out, and having the cleaning materials on hand. We're going to find ourselves in a whole new world where we're going to handle gear in ways we've never done before. And I think the A2 is going to be on the front line of that. And we as A2s are going to need not only a lot of knowledge on how to deal with this equipment, but we're going to need a lot of support from our manufacturers, our producers, our unions. From the manufacturers, we're going to need to know what we can and can't do with the equipment, so we're not damaging it electronically or cosmetically. From the unions, if it's going to be part of our general new workflow that we clean and sanitize gear, are we going to need personal protective equipment? For instance, the gloves. and we'll need our unions to help us, support us to make sure that those are provided for us on the job site. If we're going to be cleaning equipment daily on job sites, we're probably going to need extra time, and we're going to need support from our producers to make sure that the clients understand that. So again, I'm not talking about infectious disease eradication protocol. You know, I'm talking about the expectations going into the future. So just wanted to point that out. So I started this research both looking at manufacturer websites and CDC documents. And one of the things I found was that there's very specific verbiage as to what is cleaning, what is disinfecting, and what is sanitizing equipment. And I just wanted to point this out because the manufacturers who have released technical bulletins seem to make this distinction very clearly. So I just wanted to go over this quickly. I will be reading from the CDC website. Cleaning removes germs and dirt and impurities from surfaces or objects. It works by using soap or detergent and water to physically remove germs from surfaces. It does not necessarily kill germs, but by removing them, it lowers their numbers and therefore the risk of infection. And there are manufacturers who specifically say, please only use soap and water on our equipment. Do not use any solvent or any products besides soap and water. Disinfecting, on the other hand, kills germs by using chemicals. The process doesn't necessarily clean the surface, but it kills the germs and therefore lowers the risk of spreading infection. And some of the manufacturers who's released technical bulletins on cleaning the equipment have specifically described the process of disinfecting the gear. So we'll go over a couple of those in a little bit. And then sanitizing is sort of a marriage between the two of cleaning and disinfecting. It lowers the number of germs on the surface to a safer level, and according to the CDC, a safer level as judged by public health standards or requirements. And then there's a number of manufacturers who specifically describe sanitizing. And I think going forward, we'll probably want to be clear with this verbiage, clear with one another. And, you know, if there were ever any question, you could say, well, I'm actually sanitizing this gear, not disinfecting it. And I'll go through some examples in a few minutes. So you can go to your CDC website and you can find all sorts of products that you can use to disinfect surfaces. Here's one for influenza. Here's one for SARS-CoV-2 or coronavirus or COVID-19, I guess. And both of these documents, they're both like 25 pages long. They have all sorts of stuff in them. They're specifically talk about hard surfaces. But when you think about a piece of audio equipment, well, we've got all sorts of different surfaces. We have metals, plastics, different types of plastics. We have foam windscreens. So, you know, the question is really what's going to be best for the piece of equipment you have in your hand at the moment. And while I was looking around these CDC websites, I stumbled upon this. You know, the CDC recommends a 70% isopropyl alcohol solution for all electronics where there's no manufacturer instruction. And I happen to know that some manufacturers specifically, even long before the COVID-19 crisis, explicitly and specifically state in their literature not to use isopropyl alcohol on their products. For instance, certain microphone wires should not be exposed to alcohol. So as technicians, we really need to have a clear idea what we can and cannot do to clean and sanitize the equipment. And this is where it would be really great to have manufacturer recommendations. And again, not necessarily to disinfect the equipment, but at least to lower the number of germs in a safe way so we don't damage the equipment electronically or cosmetically. So I thought I'd go through a few scenarios and some equipment manufacturers that have released easy to find technical bulletins or information about their gear, starting with intercom. And I just want to say again, I chose these manufacturers because it was easy to find they had easy to find information about how to clean their gear, and I've included links at the end of this presentation. And it's by no means exhaustive. There's plenty of stuff I haven't found, and there's plenty of manufacturers who are right now writing procedures and protocols for cleaning their equipment. So this is a work in progress and to be continued. But intercom and some of these ideas are going to be applied to a lot of the equipment we receive. Working with the shops. A lot of the shops already have cleaning protocols in place and procedures. And I think in the future, we can reasonably assume that that the gear is going to arrive on show site from the shop clean. If not, you know, we can develop a procedure for, say, identifying the gear. Okay, it was on a show this morning in Chicago, and it's flying to Vegas this afternoon for you to deploy tomorrow. You know, it's been within a 24-hour period. You know, this needs to be sanitized before you start using it. Just as an idea. Having manufacturer recommended cleaning supplies on site, both ClearCom and Riedel have published very clear and easy to follow instructions on how to clean and sanitize their gear. Riedel, for example, has you create a mixture of isopropyl alcohol and water in a spray bottle, or you can use isopropyl alcohol wipes. They do point out that there is a difference between isopropyl alcohol wipes and disinfectant wipes. Disinfectant wipes have a much higher moisture content than isopropyl alcohol wipes. So it's really important not to use, you know, your generic disinfectant wipe because you can get moisture into your piece of equipment. And so they point out, use the 70% alcohol wipes or make your solution. Put it in your spray bottle, and after you've unplugged your device from power, removed your windscreens and ear pads, you spray your microfiber cloth. Don't spray the piece of equipment directly, but you spray it onto the cloth and then gently clean your endpoint. ClearCom as well has released a technical bulletin. It's a very similar procedure. You make your solution of isopropyl alcohol and water. They have you wipe the equipment with a clean, dry cloth first, and then spray the alcohol solution onto your microfiber cloth before cleaning your piece of equipment. And they remind you, of course, to allow the equipment to dry before using it. So with these recommended procedures, we can start developing best practices on site. I work with a Creative Technology, a shop out here, and they for years have shipped intercom headsets in a sealed plastic bag. In the past, I would open up the plastic bag and I would, as I programmed each intercom endpoint, I would test the intended headset with that piece of equipment. But going forward, we could do something like you program the piece of equipment, you go and deploy it, you wire it, and when you're ready to do your final comm check, you and your A2s each have your own individual headset that you will be using for the entire week on the show. You test the piece of equipment, wipe it down with the alcohol solution and microfiber cloth, and then place the sealed headset on top of the piece of equipment, and the end user can open up the bag and do that final mile of plugging it in, and hopefully have confidence that they are using a clean piece of equipment. Wireless comm is going to require a little bit more management because the batteries have to be changed every day. A lot of us right now, we put out the big grids on a big table, and each person puts their comm headset and belt pack on the grid. You know, we can develop a procedure very similar, where once it's rebatteried in the morning, it's going to have to be wiped down before it's deployed to the user. And this, of course, will create some time constraints. And this is where we're going to really need to work with the producers and make sure that they understand that we may need more time. If this is going to be part of our regular jobs, we're probably going to need more time to clean and sanitize the equipment. Just wanted to point out from ClearCom and Renal, you know, they're not guaranteeing virus-free surfaces. The one-to-one solution would fall under the definition of sanitizing the equipment. The CDC says disinfecting is a 70% alcohol solution. And so I just wanted to point that out. Probably what we'll be doing on show in a post-COVID-19 world will be sanitizing the equipment. So microphones, okay, wireless mics in particular are going to be very, very tricky. You often have different manufacturers for the mic element and the transmitter. On a Broadway show, you might have two microphones from two different manufacturers melded together into one unit, and different pieces of equipment are going to require different cleaning procedures. You know, you have to pay very careful attention. Like I was saying earlier, a lot of microphone wires cannot take alcohol. DPA in particular was one I noticed. A couple other manufacturers have asked you not to put alcohol on the mic wires. Some manufacturers do let you put alcohol on the mic wires, point source for one. Lavaliers, again, it's really different manufacturers have different recommendations, and they may be changing these recommendations going forward. I know some of them are working on the recommendations right now. So again, there's a lot of information we're going to have going forward. But let's use the example of DPA and Electrosonics, because they've both released technical bulletins that were easy for me to find, and they had pretty clear and easy procedures. So DPA, great. Headsets, clips, booms, grids, all those things can be wiped down with a 70% alcohol wipe, or with a cloth moistened sparingly with your isopropyl alcohol. DPA has a great video. I think Point Source does as well, on how you can actually wash the mic element using a little bit of demineralized water. They have a little a cute little analogy of your cocktail, where you immerse the microphone into the water, stir it, shake it out, and then leave it to dry overnight. Now, that might not be practical on a corporate show where you have a lot of quick turnarounds, but maybe on a Broadway show, or maybe if necessary at the end of the day, we may be washing the mics and then letting them dry overnight. DPA points out that you can't put alcohol on their wires. They recommend coconut oil, olive oil, or washing with soap and water. Again, you wouldn't be able to do this in a quick turnaround on a corporate show. Maybe it's not going to be necessary if the client is not touching the wire, if only the A2 is touching the wire and they can go and wash their hands afterwards. Maybe we won't need to wash the microphone wires. Certainly, though, we are going to want to replace the foam windscreens. DPA says that they can be washed with warm soap and water, but I think that we're going to want to have a lot of them on show site going forward. Some manufacturers have already committed to sending several foam windscreens with every new purchase, and Kelly, I believe, has also interfaced with some manufacturers about what we can do for going forward in terms of packaging, and maybe some other ideas in terms of the durability of the foam windscreens if they're only going to be single-use items. Other options: increase the number of microphones, certainly an option. DPA says you can leave the microphone untouched for 72 hours. I would expect certainly that some presenters are going to bring their own mics, and It may seem unconventional, but DPA says you can bake your microphone in the oven. And hey, we've already got the baking tins, right? So you can bake the microphone in the oven for 30 minutes. Transmitters. I would expect that we can't bake the transmitters. I haven't found any information either way, but I kind of expect we're not going to be putting our transmitters in the oven. Electrosonics has come up with some cleaning procedures for cleaning, in fact, disinfecting their transmitters. They have you have a much higher concentration of isopropyl alcohol and water. You can also use a 70% isopropyl alcohol wipes, clean microfiber cloth and Q-tips. And after you've disconnected all power cords and removed all batteries, you again spray the alcohol solution onto your microfiber cloth. And they recommend using your Q-tips to clean switches, terminals, etc. Of course, always taking care not to get any liquids into the openings. Mixing consoles. Okay, mixing consoles, like Max said, they're a whole new can of worms. I haven't found a lot of manufacturer recommendations, but we do have a Lawo console in the recording studio of the San Francisco Symphony, and they have put out recommendations for their mixing console. And I'm going to assume that these recommendations will probably be usable for several different mixing consoles. They very much don't want you to use bleach or alcohol. They only want you to use very mild cleaning detergents or cleaning agents, they say, on their gear. Again, they say over and over again in their paperwork, please don't use alcohol on the mixing consoles. You might, you might render your warranty unusable. So, so what do we do, right? Lawo recommends after you're unplugging the mixing console from the power source that you wash it with soap and water, which I'm terrified to do, but there may be situations where you can do that. They also recommend that if you do have multiple users on the Lawo console, that each user wears gloves, so you're not having to wash the console frequently. This is going to be an issue, especially in smaller, thinking the Lawo console, it's a Cadillac, right? In a small AV room where you may have several users in a day, what are we going to do going forward? I don't have the answer to that, but that's one of the questions we want to ask. I work in a theater. We have assisted listening devices. Those are definitely going to need to be cleaned after each and every use. We have a Listen Technology assisted listening system at Davies Symphony Hall. And they've developed their own disinfecting wipes called Listen Disinfecting Wipes. They have you wipe down the piece of equipment and they remind you to make sure that it remains wet for several minutes. And I think some of the other manufacturers point that out as well. You can't just wipe or moisten the piece of equipment and then dry it right away. You've got to let the alcohol sit on it or the disinfectant in the Listen example, sit on the piece of equipment for a number of minutes to allow it to kill the germs before you start using it. So big takeaways, despite the CDC saying 70% alcohol on all electronic equipment, if you don't have a manufacturer recommendation, the use of isopropyl alcohol is not universal. And this is really where we need the manufacturers to step in and say, what can and can't we do to clean and sanitize the gear? All of them pretty much say never to spray any liquid directly onto a piece of equipment. And all of them universally do say to disconnect power cords or remove batteries before cleaning. So laptops, iPads, touch surfaces, there's a lot of stuff that I haven't gotten to. You know, that's going to be chapter 2. Like I said, this is a work in progress. I work with the San Francisco Symphony. We do a lot of instrument miking, you know, a bridge mic on a violin. Well, that's got to be touched by human hands. And what are the musicians going to tolerate going forward? How about the cleaning of musical instruments? A lot of times a electronic keyboard or is going to be rented and brought in, and will we need to clean it before the keyboardist is willing to play? Two-way radios, IFBs, in-ear monitors. Like I said, I've got several links at the end of this and more to come. And I know that people are going to also be helping me sending links in. Manufacturers will be making recommendations. So like I said, that's chapter 2. And that's all I've got to say. Be well, be safe. This is my puppy, and she has a message of hope for all of us.
That's what I love about you, Denise. I love the answers and the optimism all at the same time. The questions that we raised, you know, one of the things, obviously we're collecting as many questions as possible and ideas. You know, we didn't get into things like UV. We'll talk about some of that in just a minute. But one of the big challenges will be that we don't know what we don't know, right? We've talked about that many times around this topic, and UV is one of those things. So we'll get to that in just a minute. I'm gonna pull up a couple things real quick. You should be seeing right now a picture of the old days, right? The idea of the headset, and I think in some ways the headsets come to personify for our industry the challenge and opportunity all at the same time, right? And as we go along, we see these examples of products that can be brought to bear on this, and you talked about windscreens, right? So here's our little part numbers. I think we're going to get very used to what those part numbers are, and for this part of the discussion, I'm going to invite Kevin Parrish to join me. Kevin works out in the field like all of us. He represents the broadcast community, and some of you may recognize him from RF Faraday cage match, but you spend your days in the remote environment, Kevin, and to me, one of the things that we've come to realize in this time frame, in the short term, broadcast is still obviously going on, but also is going to be the one that will probably return first in larger workforce numbers as productions go. And then you know, I would expect to see the event community and some of the things I'm going to say, folks. I'm trying to provoke discussion, so if you disagree, that's okay. I'm not going to take it personally. I want to put as many ideas and thoughts out there as we can right now. So Kevin, you got a few show and tells there for me. I've asked you to bring some props along today. Talk about just what are some of the challenges that you've come across, and how are you dealing with, like, you got a headset on right now, and then how are you dealing with other things?
Well, first off, I'd like to say thanks to Denise for laying the foundation for all of this, and for her time that benefits all of us. This, of course, is going to be a work in progress, and all of us need to share our real world experiences, what we've come up with to make this work for everybody. So the tip of the hat to Denise. Thank you very much. Kelly, I think what's happening now is that it's just kind of being made up as things go along. So you use your experience out in the field and what you have had to do in the past to keep things clean, keep things going, and so forth, realize that in remote broadcasting or outside broadcast, that we're in, for the most part, not in a structured environment. Sports would probably be kind of similar. In news, depending on what the show is, we might have a little bit more time for preparations and cleanup and so forth. Before we got going on this, I made the comment to Kelly. I said, a lot of this is kind of like Antiques Roadshow. I see that final scene at the end, and the doors are closing, and it's kind of like everybody's tired. You've been working a long day. You want to get home. The budget is this. There is no overtime. The mobile unit is leaving. The truck is leaving. Great. I get all of that. But somewhere along the line, something has got to give, because we're talking about everyone's safety here. And a lot of what we're dealing with is the unknown, and information continues to come in on a daily basis or hourly basis in our personal lives, professionally. So a lot of this is going to continue to evolve as we go along. In my world, what we have done all along is to clean the best way that we can. So when equipment goes out on a remote, when it comes back to the shop, there is a period of refresh. So that would be overall general cleaning. In the case of a wireless microphone, if the transmitter is really dirty, we might wash it or, wipe it down a little bit. All of the lavs are wiped down and then coiled up nicely, and each one is put into an individual Ziploc bag. And then in the I normally put in a 6-channel system, I put 7 lavs. So each of the 7 lavs goes into an individual Ziploc bag after they've been wound up and cleaned and so forth, and the equipment is made ready for the next show. As we were coming into all of this COVID stuff here a couple of weeks ago, I had reached out to seek some professional guidance from health officials. What's the best practice? So we got the Clorox bleach here and do your thing. Sometimes we simply can't use that. And when I brought up items that are commonly used in the studio environment, those being the old headsets, and I said, well, these change around and go from person to person, show to show. Some people have their own. How do we clean these things? How do we clean the foam windscreen? So am I going to say it, or am I going to spray it? Ugh, we don't want this. What are we going to do? Same with ear pads, ear cushions. So all of these things, devices that ordinarily we may not think about, now bring up new challenges in the workplace. So I think we have 2 issues that we deal with. And one is, do we have the ability when we're out on a job that is set up, do the job, tear it down, load out, to clean before we repack? In my world, that's something that is not really possible to do. That may change in the future. I honestly don't know. I would think that more the cleaning and reading stuff would come when the gear returns back to the shop and we're in a structured environment and we have all of the resources available. But that brings up the concern, what do you do when you're traveling or your gear has just finished from one job and it's going to go out to the next job? Does that mean the person that's going to receive it next is going to clean the gear? Do I need to clean it before it goes? A lot of stuff goes in Pelican cases with foam inserts and so on and so forth. If I had some cooties on some of the stuff and now it goes in the Pelican case, I may have had one item that had cooties on it. Now I've put a bunch of stuff together in a common transport in the Pelican case, and I've got a whole case full of cootie stuff. So a lot of this is going to evolve as we go along, and how we interact with one another, I think, is going to change as well. We talk about the 6-foot spacing and social distancing and so forth. Those that work in a mobile unit, which is not something that I do, you go like, how the heck are they going to do that? So I think that all of us, we need to respect the workplace. Think to yourself right now, I'm a very social person and an extrovert, and I like to make the rounds and, hey, how you doing? And, you know, people I haven't seen, give them a big old bear hug and all of that. You can't do that right now. So you have to think, respect the workplace. Do I need to be in any particular area? If I'm not directly involved, do I need to go in and see the A1 or whatever, or see the, you know, the brilliant mentor with the green hair in person? Yeah, it's nice to see him in person, but I might be able just to push the button, or, hey, Pete, how you doing, buddy? Thinking of you, or whatever the case may be. So I think the social distancing and respecting one another's workplace and environment is going to change big time for us.
Yeah, you bring up a really interesting point that we haven't spent a lot of time on, and that is that on an industry that's built around muscle memory, we have that, and the fact that we are a lot of extroverts. There's a lot of introverts as well, but our entire job revolves around interacting. You know, if you're in A2, you're putting that mic on there. Hey, Denise, if you wouldn't mind joining us again, I would love to introduce you back into this discussion around the idea of the mixer. You know, we talked about we heard from Mac earlier in the webcast about the discoloration and the challenges they're having around that, but that's one console, right? You're in a control room, and this is something that, you know, or in the case of a bag mixer, or in, you know, a field mixer, Kevin, that even, or in trucks, but in a lot of what you come across, Denise, you know, because not only are you dealing with, you know, the great local 16 out there that I've had the privilege of working with so many times on shows, some of the best people, you know, on the planet, and great crews. They're usually pretty busy in a convention center. There's more than one person touching that mixer. You know, if I'm out mixing, it might just be me, right? And I get the nice paintbrush that comes with the console to keep it clean. But I never thought about, well, who's going to be using this after me, or, you know, who used it before me? We were talking Saturday, Denise, just relate some of kind of that workflow that you run across when you might be in a multi-room kind of corporate environment.
Well, yeah, you know, I think especially in a small AV show, you would have the person who's mixing the show in the morning, and then in an AV environment, often you have the relief person who comes in and mixes the show during your lunch break. So there's two users, or you know, there's definitely many scenarios where you have multiple mixers on one day. And again, I said I couldn't find a lot of manufacturer recommendations. One thing that the Lawo group says, because their consoles are installed in broadcast studios that are working right now, where you may have several mixers all in one day, one after the other. You know, if they're running a 24-hour studio, everyone has to wear gloves. That may be what we do going forward, especially if we're unable to use, say, alcohol or some sort of mild disinfectant or sanitizing procedure for the console. It would be great to hear from manufacturers, especially of the low-end consoles, because I think that's really where that issue is going to come up in the AV room. So, you know, not the super fancy Cadillac of consoles that you guys get to use, but the, you know, the little Behringer or the smaller format Yamahas that are going to be in AV rooms. I think that's going to be really important going forward. How do we deal with it? And it'd be great if the manufacturers could, you know, start thinking about that and give us guidance.
That's a good point, because even the entry level consoles and mixers these days have some form of touch screen in them, whether that's for programming, whether that's for using use. And you know, we're seeing that coming in as a recurring comment. Touch screens. How do I touch a touch screen with a glove that maybe that screen's a capacitance versus a resistance, right? Is it a stylus? Is it, you know, again, I think we have to think unconventionally for that. At least, you know, again, I like to, if anybody knows me by now, it's that I do like to constrain my arguments, right? I do like to say, okay, what's in it for us the next 18 months, right? And then maybe what's out there further, you know, that 18 to 24 months. And then, you know, things are going to look a lot different 18 months from now. That's the reality. But what we're managing to is the moment. We don't want to be reactive, overly reactive, but at the same time, it's like, here's the reality. The windscreen thing, you were talking about that, you know, Kevin, you showed, you know, you guys are replacing that, the say it, not spray it, right? The I'm going to require everybody memorizes the part numbers for every Lawo windscreen and every headset. But for the manufacturers listening, here's something I would throw out there to you. If we know that windscreens, at least for the short term, meaning 18 months, are now disposables, right? What about the opportunity to look for a biodegradable product that's also eco-friendly, that's the long play, right? Yes, will we continue to keep buying these windscreens in abundance? You bet. We're going to keep doing that because that's what we need to do. But again, looking for opportunity in the future, why can't they? If we know that they're going to break down anyhow or be thrown away, let's try and find something that can go to a landfill and won't destroy the earth, right?
And be a partner as well.
And be
So
a part, yeah.
is this worth $17? I don't know. Maybe to some it is. And you're in business to make a profit. But we're in an emergency right now. And if this truly, you're charging me $17 for this, but if this in reality costs $4, but you have process and handling on your end, charge me $6, but not 17. So we can keep things going and keep everybody safe. There's also a responsibility there on the part of manufacturers as well to support this effort of trying to do the right things as we educate ourselves moving forward and to protect the end user of your equipment.
True, true. And to that point, everybody stay on the screen. Let's bring in Michael Mason for a second from CP. If you don't mind joining me, Michael. You know, you were on with us yesterday on the broadcast A1, A2. And one of the reasons I asked you to come back is because so much of your equipment, again, it seems like this is a broadcast focused week, and it kind of is. It's just the way it worked out. You know, we woke up, the three of us, me, Mac, and Pete, and we said, what do we want to hear about next week? And that's kind of how our week works. But in reality, broadcast market is going to be back a little earlier than others. It's also very big into the single use market and the handheld and the Lawo and the IFB, the highly personable items. Now, CP's always had a you know, a very good workflow prior to COVID, you know, when we get gear shipped to us from you. But can you just, you know, touch on what every idea I've had so far costs somebody a lot of money. All right, I won't make any bones about that. That every brilliant idea I've ever dreamed up usually has a few dollar signs hanging next to it.
Or time.
Or time, which relates back to money, right?
Same thing.
And so Michael, tell us kind of what you were doing before this, and in terms of, you know, packaging product to go out, and what you think you may be, what are you considering different?
Well, I mean, first realize that a rental company's or production company's best use of their equipment plays directly into their ROI. So our best dream is that a piece of gear goes out, it comes back, it gets washed, rinsed, put in a bag, and back out the same day. So one, we may have to slow down that process, which would then also entail buying more gear. But the straight rinse and clean now has to be more of a rinse, deinfect, sanitize, whatever that process is going to become. So there's going to be a slowdown in the process that is more time, more money, more chemicals, if that's what it is. But we, you know, across the board use, you know, little plastic containers to hold our microphones. So we may be going to a plastic bag scenario and a heat sealer. you know, something that is, again, more intensive, but at least it's been dealt with, you know, from a more secure standard that Denise or Kevin are going to now get a product from us that is sealed and in theory went through a more intensive cleaning process.
And Mike, there's also an end user responsibility on that. So it's clear, it's a clear bag. You can see what's in it. Unless you need what's inside this bag, don't open the damn thing.
Right.
Yep.
And to Denise's point, with the headsets.
Yep.
So we have an end user responsibility there as well too, to cut down on the expense and the time. And again, I would put this under the thing of workplace respect, respect for others.
Yeah.
And respect for the person that may be the one that's going to end up cleaning all of this stuff when it's over and done with.
That's an excellent point. Hey, Pete, would you mind bringing up the list online? There have been so many great ideas and comments that have been coming in. You know, again, a lot of the stuff we're repeating, partially because the more we repeat something, the better we understand it, right? You know, well, this is in your handouts, you'll see a PDF I put in, your best bet for a safe workplace. Right. I found this one, frankly, I found it this morning through one of my LinkedIn contacts. I was just looking through things and somebody said, hey, I like this person. I looked at this and I was like, you know what? Here's a really good, clear way to articulate this. You know, and yes, I did reach out to that individual and ask for their permission to use it because I'm very big about intellectual property. And when people put a lot of work or time into something, I always like to ask for that. But, you know, there's so many different ways to manage our environment, meaning our work environment, and then where that respect comes in now more than ever. Thinking about just how necessary is it for me to touch this piece of gear? Well, if I touch this piece of gear, have I contaminated again? Again, short-term window here. We're not thinking about, hey, am I going to have to work this way the rest of my entire career? No, you are not. I'm willing to go that far out on a limb and say what we're going to do for the next 18 months is not what we're going to do for the rest of the time before I retire. But in the interim, we're gonna work differently. I saw somebody brought up a point about adding more people to the show to deal with these kind of things. We talked about that yesterday. Just the networking person that's also an A2, the A2 that's also part of this process, and frankly, we're just talking about the audio department. We haven't touched lighting. We have not touched video, right? Rinse and repeat, right? They're what we're talking about is stuff that they're going to be challenged with too. But frankly, I'm proud to be the tip of the spear because we're the communications people. They come to us to get their headsets, where we have the opportunity to lead through example, right? And so what I'm going to do is start catching all the drum things, those plexiglass from the drums that as an audio guy, I'm not really sure exactly how effective they are, but they're going to be really good barriers for me at front of house. So I'm going to put one up between everybody, right? Does that necessarily make everybody safer? Yes, sometimes it does. Does it make people feel better about their workplace? Absolutely. And if people can come in confident and people can be comfortable, we get better productivity, right? And that's one thing, Michael, we didn't talk about, but the benefit of productivity to a business when number one, something can be systemized, and number two, it can bring confidence to a customer. There's just a lot of side benefits that come with just really good practices, right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I mean, it's, you know, I think that goes not only for the business, just through the personal aspect of the industries that we're dealing in. It's like, you know, if I'm working next to KP or Denise, you know, just having the confidence that they're doing the right thing, seeing me doing the right thing, it just spreads from there, so to say.
Right, right, exactly. The good spread, right? Well,
Yeah,
I guess we have to differentiate that now, right?
Absolutely.
I'm going to pull up a couple examples here of products that let's see here. That hey Pete, would you mind throwing the screen back to me for just a moment? I just want to keep planting some ideas around with folks that you'll see on the screen here. An example looks more like a toilet you know, paper holder, but the clean box, right? This got shared yesterday as an option of something that you put devices into or products. And this will be, I'll include this in your handouts, folks. I'll add that before we wrap up. But like the stainless UV box, I got that link. It's from Granger. Ben from Alford shared that with me, that they're not necessarily doing this, but everybody's investigating, right? Everybody's trying to understand. And so to that point, I would ask manufacturers to say, okay, we have this ability to buy this product. We're going to start testing our products in these ovens. I thought it was so funny to hear we can bake our mics, right? When in the world would you ever propose that idea, except for now? I agree with you, Denise. I think probably belt packs will probably be a little longer before we start baking those and serving them for dinner. But the idea of everything's on the table right now, right? And this is that moment. This is Apollo 13, that scene where this must go into here and it has to do that when it's finished. And right now, we're at that point. We should be dumping every idea onto the table that we can. UV is a popular topic, mainly because it's something that appears to work at scale and speed on one level, but we don't know about our industry. We've seen it in the medical community. That makes perfect sense. Now we're going to have to bring it down market to a lot of different other areas. Hey, Kevin,
And
here's
in
a
the
question I
medical
have around
community,
cameras.
there's a lot of stainless steel stuff and so forth there too, rather
Right.
than, you know, a belt pack with rubber knobs and plastic and UV and who knows what the deal is here, you know. So earlier, Denise had talked about we don't want to be using the old alcohol on your wires, and I can understand that. It's going to dry them out, it's going to crack them and so forth. I've never heard the coconut, you know, oil before and all of this, so it's going to be a learning process moving forward. And the other thing, and Michael will run into this in his operation, is when we get back to the shop post show, will we need to set up like a designated area? We're kind of crammed for space now, but if we need to leave something out to dry overnight or for 72 hours, obviously, even when it's back in the shop, there needs to be understanding and safeguards taken. So it's like, leave the stuff alone. This is,
Right.
you know, you're in the containment vessel area there. Stay away. Danger, Will Robinson type of stuff.
Right. You know, and Denise had a picture of, you know, we'll give James Stoffel the credit for it. The bread tin, right? That has become so ubiquitous on site for keeping things. Producer friend of mine said, well, how about the sealable bread tin that lets you still keep it lit up if you need it for that, but it becomes a storage. And then safety tape that just says, hey, you know what? This gear's been tested. We've done our rehearsal. It's ready to go for tomorrow morning. It's sealed. I come into my workspace in the morning. I see a seal that's broken. To Kevin's point, yeah, it's kind of, you know, you're not being very considerate of your coworker by doing that, because now I'm going to have to go through and do my workflow, even if it was because you were just curious. And, you know, the security person like, oh, why is it taped closed, right? Pop it. But
There's many ways to do that. I actually use meter seals myself. So on the
okay,
Pelican case, when a piece of equipment is ready and that kit is checked, it actually has a wire meter seal that one must break. And I actually have seal presses, you know, with my initials in on it. And I am giving you my personal guarantee that what's on the outside of the box and all the barcodes and what's inside the box is inside the box and everything works. I'm looking at it that you may have a news assignment and you're going to go to the moon, and I am the guy that packed the gear, but I step into it one more layer, go in deeper, that I'm going to be the person, I am going to be the person that's going to use this equipment. Or you're 82nd Airborne and you packed someone else's parachute. It damn well better work the first time. So there is a lot of, again, back to workplace respect and the love for your coworkers and your colleagues. I'm packing up some gear in New York that might be used halfway around the world. I never know who the end user is going to be, but I put myself in that person's boots to making sure that from soup to nuts, everything is in there. And it is a very, very deep and personal commitment, you know. So now we have all of this extra cleaning stuff that goes into it. But anyway, all of my gear, when it is routine and made ready to go out of the firehouse, the next time somebody pulls the hook on the little red box on the corner, it's ready to go.
Right. Now, that something that came to mind when you were saying all that, you know, A2 discussions we've had in the past were what's in your toolbox, right? What did you go to work with? You know, obviously everybody had their cue box, their Sharpies, their tape. Well, yes, I agree with you, Denise, that I believe that the workplace is going to need to provide, you know, the gloves and things like that. But I think there's also that opportunity for A2s, A1s, for everybody on the team to carry that extra supply of gloves with them. That if they're in a situation where maybe that, frankly, it would not surprise me the first show out we run out, because these are the kind of things that, well, the entire planet is trying to build, you know, on a daily basis, and these are going to happen. And so that doesn't, just because the workplace does or doesn't provide it, doesn't take that away from, hey, let's go in prepared. And go ahead.
And that will continue to evolve. So you're going to show up on the job, and you know it's your workplace. Eventually, when the mobile unit gets unloaded or all the stuff comes out of the truck, there's going to be some PPE or items available. But when you show up, you got to show up and be ready to go. So for me, I'd buy my own box and keep 2 or 3 pairs in my gear bag. So when I get to the job location, I can hit the ground running and know, hopefully, that there would be a replenishment, that the quartermaster at some point will come to life on your particular job and you're going to be able to get what you need.
Right.
Yeah, and I agree. I think most people are going to be bringing their own PPE, especially the gloves. But it really should, if it's part of the daily workflow and the expected job duties of the A2, then it really should be, you know,
Provided, yes.
provided.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I personally would love to see a nice bunch of piles of boxes of black gloves,
Yes.
and that fit with the environment we're working in, that still allow us to help our audience break down that wall of belief, right? Because and to send a different sense. You know, it's interesting how colors can play that role. And again, we have this opportunity to communicate with our customers the way we never have before. If my customer feels more comfortable that a blue glove gives them a sense of cleanliness, I will wear blue gloves. If somebody says, hey, look, the black gloves, I like this because it blends in better to the environment that is our creative sense, I don't care. It doesn't, not going to sweat that. But if it means that I have an opportunity to work differently, and to be appreciated for that, you bet I'm going to do it. This to me is just so easy stuff. So let's, I've been watching the Q&A stuff and the points coming in, and some of the things I would like to just touch on again for manufacturers that are listening, because I'm pointing you guys out right now, because whether you're watching live or whether you're going to watch this later, you are that next layer of information that we need to get in order to piece everything together, right? Because we're in the 3 big buckets. At the high end here is the UV, the sanitation, sterilization systems. How do we do this in bulk, right? And that's what that technology helps to do. We can do more things faster, but we need information on that. So I will commit to finding model numbers. Please, anybody out there, things you're investigating, forward them to us at Practical Show Tech here. One of the questions was, where will this information, will it be available? Absolutely. We're going to start a page on Practical Show Tech, and happy to start a complete another web page. It doesn't really matter, where all this information can be consolidated. You can go in. There is nothing special here, other than what's special about it is everybody being willing to contribute to it. So we have the big bucket of sterilization, of black light treatments, things like that, understanding safety of human beings. And I'm not suggesting anytime here that the manufacturers are to be the medical professionals, or that Michael Mason at CP is to make a medical determination of how they're taking care of their gear. We're simply saying, go back to those manufacturers of the sterilization ovens, of the UV light manufacturers, and saying, you're making these claims, we're manufacturers of these products. Here's your opportunity to sell a lot of this stuff. Help us know what, and if it doesn't exist, let's build it. Okay. This is something we can go to. The Elon Musk is taking us around the galaxy, right? Richard Branson is going to be taking people to the moon for a trip at some point. All right. We can fix this problem. This is not hard in the overall scheme of things, right? Relatively speaking. Number two is moving down from there is to say, what are those cleaning agents, right? Kevin showed us a lot of examples. The wipes, and those are which brand, Kevin, that you're holding up? Tech Spray, Tech Wipe.
Tech Spray.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Tech Spray. Right.
Right. So we know
these are
that
very hard to find. The super Sani cloth right there. I mean, some of the on the side here, some of the stuff that this kills, I can't even pronounce. This is heavy duty.
Well, it's got to be good then. I mean, if it's written in Latin, it's really good stuff. That's all I know. Sure, not really, but you know what I mean. The idea of I respect, Michael, the millions and millions and millions of dollars that you guys invest in technology. Shouldn't have to be discolored because we're trying to keep the user safe. There's no reason for it. We just need to get this question answered, and it's going to take the big movers. And for that, I'm talking console manufacturers. I'm talking the big wireless manufacturers. We've seen it done. I've brought up numerous times the repack. It's just a stellar example of how the wireless community came together, represented the interests of production, and was able to find a solution. It's the same thing here. Let's come together and let's say, all right, if a cleaning agent does not exist that discolors a console, if we can't get past that, then let's make something, right?
And hopefully there would be some sort of industry standard with all of that. So it would keep the cost down. If it's something, a new chemical formulation that needs to come up with that would fit the bill in multiple areas, that's good for all of us. And it's kind of generic in nature. So if I was, hey, do you have any XYZ cleaner? Yeah, sure, here you go. Or do you need some XYZ cleaner? Here you go. It's good for my gear. Hopefully it would be good for your gear, realizing that there are some specialty surfaces, consoles, cameras, and things like that would require extra attention, and you may not be able to use the generic stuff, whatever it's going to be.
True. And I'm
Kelly,
sure
these have been marketed for years for cleaning your computer screen. They're 70% water and only 30% isopropyl alcohol, not ethyl alcohol. And it's been one of the things they say specifically, it will not discolor any product.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things
these are 8 by 10 sheets, individually packaged. They come in all different sizes.
I think that's why a lot of the manufacturers are saying isopropyl excuse me, with just, you know, cut down with water and a microfiber cloth. Seems to be about
Yeah,
as
this is a cloth, not a tissue.
Yeah.
It won't come apart.
And then depending on what you get, so this one here specifically says safe for plastics. Doesn't say anything about rubber, so knobs on your belt pack or your wires or whatever, but safe on plastic. So here again, there's going to be a little bit of an education and learning as far as what products to use where.
While you were
Absolutely.
all talking, I found a link for disposable gloves with touchscreen capability, $8 for 10. And I put the link on the list there.
Cool. And obviously we're going to be looking to drive that cost down. That's a, you know, as a per piece cost when we're talking about millions of use, you know, a lot of
Well,
opportunities here.
this is for
Mhm.
people who are on consoles to have touchscreens they have to use and stuff like that. You don't, you know,
Absolutely.
most people won't need anything more than the black you get $8 for 100, you know.
Exactly. No, that's a good point, you know. But again, short term, long term, right? 18 months, 18 to 24 is kind of my magic window I'm looking at right now that I'm managing within. Because to me, that's something that we can do when we move past that. That does become a longer term solution. And I think, as was pointed out so great by Pete, one of the byproducts of this is people are just healthier, right? We don't transfer as many colds because I'm not going, and I will tell you right now, I own a million different headsets, and yet I always seem to go in the back drawer and grab whatever pH 88 is laying next to there and just grab it and go, right? I'm pretty sure that's why I had so many colds last year. I'm going to blame it on that, you know, just not great behavior on my own part, right? Just hygiene, right? And this is before COVID. So, you know, again, a lot of these ideas that are coming in, Pete, we're cutting and pasting those in, and we're going to share these out just as quickly as possible. I will create a mailing list from everybody who registered for today's webinar, and I'll email that out to you, and then it'll also be on our website. Denise, I think what we'll commit to do, and I'll commit Pete to it because he's the webmaster for our group. Let's create a page that will be our COVID-19 SharePoint, that will be a place where for now we'll share that out. Everybody else that's interested in that, I would suggest to other vendors, when that appropriate time comes, reach out to Denise. I will make a selfish plug that I do believe that the work you're doing is worth compensation. So when you have an opportunity and you can bring her in to consult and talk about these workflows, let's try and take care of each other during these downtimes, right? I think we have a great opportunity to do that and to formulate strategies, because the more uniform we are across the world, I'm gonna take it that far here, that this is something that can be done. Like I said, we have some other harder topics that are going to come up. I got some excellent what am I trying to say? Excellent tips from producers, right? And those are harder. Those are much harder topics, right? Should I be able to not pay as much for a meeting facility because I can only seat half the number of people, yet it takes the same amount of air conditioning and electricity to run this room, right? Well, those are harder discussions, and we're not going to have those, but I'm also not ignoring those difficult topics either. I don't want anybody to think that we're trying to sugarcoat this, but as the technicians that are on the front line of using this gear, when we're allowed to again, we'll answer these questions, and the other ones will have to get answered, and they will. The workplace, I'm confident that between the local and the international IATSE and the companies all represented, whether on this call or within our production world, everybody wants to be able to work and have people work safely and have high productivity. And we will find those answers find your place in this discussion. There's always a place for that, reminding your friends. Here is a question that sort of directly, can anyone speak to the change in production technique to everyone working at home? For instance, CMA, Our Country on CBS, One World Together at Home are examples of audio folks needing to stitch various forms of homebrewed content together. And curious as how to that is all happening. I think there's a topic that we could
That's a webinar in
build
and of
around.
itself right
Exactly.
there. Yeah.
For all of these challenges, there is that new opportunity. And I would, we're going to take that as an idea for a topic, but also while we're waiting, we're going to need to come up with new ways to work and new opportunities. So I see my email has great ideas coming in here that will get onto our website. We'll send out an email when that page is up. And I see Mac has rejoined us from going around discoloring all the hardware that he's responsible for using.
There was actually a question directed directly to Mac that came up. What practices are you and the crew in your daily gig doing now to protect yourself and keep the town safe? What are you doing to disinfect gear?
Well, as I was saying, we have been wiping it down with wipes. At this point, we are down to, for the last 3 weeks, I'm the only person who has touched that console, and I wear gloves. And by the way, those are regular pharmacy nitrile surgical gloves, and they work fine with touchscreens, at least on my iPad and on the SSL console, because that console is heavily touchscreen oriented. We are, as I said at the beginning, we are physically distancing. We can't have a full crew in the control room because there's not room for people to distance. I mean, the front bench of the control room is maybe 35 feet long, and there's 3 people that sit at that, and the back bench is a little shorter, and there's 2 people that sit at that. And so we're physically distancing. We are cleaning the equipment. We're wearing masks. We're wearing gloves. In the actual studio where we have the CEO of the company comes down to the studio to do the broadcasts. Everybody else is from their homes or from their offices via the web, and everything comes to us as individual feeds, and then we cut it together as if it's a real TV show. But the CEO gets mic'd up. He puts his own mic on. Nobody uses that mic but him. He has his own IFB that he puts on. There's a cameraman in there with him who dresses the cables for him on the IFB. He dresses the cable himself on the mic. And Rich, the guy in the studio, wears a mask and gloves. The CEO does not, because he's presenting to his entire company, and he has to appear to be a master of the universe. But there's a lot of care taken, both in dealing with David and with keeping us safe. We have another control room that's got a couple of tape ops in it that do recording, and the shader sits in the broadcast equipment room. And so everybody is physically distanced and wearing gloves, wearing masks. There are, Purell dispensers all over the facility. The corporate, we don't leave the building, so you go eat in the corporate cafeteria, which has been closed, and now there's only prepared meals available, and you stand in a line 6 feet apart to pick them up. I mean, it's as work environments go in today's age, I think it's about as safe as an environment as I could be in. I mean, my daughter is trying to get me to stop going to work, but as one of the only people in this business still working, I'm not going to throw away that opportunity.
Sure.
So, you know, I commute from Upper Westchester down to Lower Manhattan in my own car that I'm the only one using. I enter an empty office building and go to a control room where I'm the only one in my section of the control room, and I'm the only one touching the equipment. But yeah, it's all stuff we're going to have to do.
It is, and again, I'd like to point out here, we're talking about this short term, right? We know that this isn't forever. Vaccines will come. I'm confident of that. The resources will, you know, the scientific opportunities. But what I would say in this short term, if you're with a vendor, right? If you're a vendor listening in, this is a great opportunity. You know, everybody, you know, when all this started, immediately every LinkedIn and Facebook post is we can do streaming, and we get a barrage of noise, right? And I think a lot of this is going to be the same thing. Hey, we're ready to keep things clean, and that's a great message that you should get out. But a very organized, almost picture-like, this is how we are going to on show site. This is our procedure, whether those are with pictures, whether those are with examples. Lead with that, saying, hey, you know what, these are the best practices that we're going to put into place. I won't tell you what those should be right now, because I think we're still discovering some of those, but I think you do know all the low-hanging stuff that you can easily answer. And more importantly, as you're developing your communication strategies for your clients, you're also just developing your communication strategy for your employees. And I would say the opposite on this one. Normally we're talking to our customers and we're trying to get business. In this particular message, if you start formulating it for your employees and how you're going to work, by the time you're done building that strategy, you'll be able to immediately share that with your customer then. And it becomes a true win-win, because your workforce is safe, your workforce feels comfortable, your workforce feels confident, and your customer is getting ultimately what they were looking for, which is, number one, they want to know that you're doing everything possible, because, you know, frankly, that word liability is just something that is something that people above my pay grade are going to have to deal with, right? But I'm still dealing with it by saying, here are the things I can affect change around. So we have so many great ideas here. We're going to keep getting all these copied across. Anybody, Denise, you did the workload on this. Do you have any closing thoughts that you want to bring to the audience that maybe you thought about while we were sitting here?
I did have one idea that I forgot to mention, and I think it was something Max said that reminded me, or something Pete said that reminded me. You know, often on a corporate show, you are given the facility to wash your hands, but not always the opportunity. You know, we'll have 12 people on stage over the course of a 2-hour show. We'll have a half-hour turnaround where we take all those mics off, turn them around. Maybe the producers are going to give us more time to do that, but one of the things we really need time to do is wash our hands, and we also need to remember to do it. But something Pete said, you know, we're all going to be washing our hands in the future a lot more, and we need the opportunity as A2s who are touching people. We need that opportunity, and it might mean building time into the shows to wash our hands.
Also, there
you know,
might be provided just a sink, a portable sink backstage, not where you have to go off, somewhere maybe near A2 land, for want of a better place, where it has running water and disinfectant soap and paper towels.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So yeah, that was my final thought. Besides, you know, thank everybody. This is really great. It's a really great, very important discussion that we need to have. And like we said, you know, moving forward, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, we have some time to figure this out, and we should do it. And thank you, Kelly.
Well, we do have time, and you know, right from the beginning, we said during that town hall, and this whole discussion was about taking your point about time. We have time, and we have a limited window of time, I believe, where people are all rowing in one direction, if you will, and we have to maximize that to the point of saying, look, we want to be at the table. These regulatory commissions that are going to be formed as we go back to work, we want to have a strategy and a plan and a thought ready, because we don't want to be part of a bigger conglomerate of, well, we're just going to use the biggest solution to this, and it creates the inability for us to get the greatest number of people back to work, and we can do all that safely. So part of this is that, you know, I saw a note about certification or an idea around that. So again, reaching out to all these other people that are part of the audio and video and production community that provide those types of, whether it's Axia, whether it's the different CTs, certification bodies, to say, hey, here's a new opportunity. We don't have all the answers right now, but we're going to start working on that, because going forward, we'll all find greater success. So I promise to be done at 3. It is 3 o'clock. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And thank you, Michael, and thank you for Kevin and Denise for joining us for this topic. Keep an eye on the website. We will continue this discussion, and I'm gonna bet we're gonna have at least one more of these before we take our summer hiatus. So long, everybody. Have a great afternoon, and we're gonna get ready for our DMB discussion next in an hour. So long.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks,
All right.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you, everybody.